Grieving tribal chief widower discovers a woman unclaimed, takes her as his wife by dusk. The sun rose slowly over the rolling plains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Waikasa Mato, the Lakota chief, stood at the edge of the village, his eyes following the river that wound through the land like a silver ribbon. The morning was quiet, but in his heart a storm of sorrow had not yet passed. It had been months since his wife Wiyaka had died. The memory of her laughter, the gentle curve of her smile, and the warmth of her hand haunted him. Though the tribe had offered their condolences and support, Wakasamato felt the emptiness most sharply when he walked alone. The village carried on, children laughing as they played with sticks and stones, hunters returning with small catches, elders speaking in soft, measured voices. But none of it filled the void left by Wiyaka. Wakasamato's shoulders were heavy with grief as he followed the river path, the dew soaking through his moccasins. The wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying with it the faint scent of sage and earth. He inhaled deeply, hoping that the air itself could cleanse his sadness. Each step seemed heavier than the last, yet he walked on, drawn by the solitude that the river offered. As he neared a bend in the river, he noticed a figure standing motionless on the opposite bank. At first, he thought it was a trick of the morning light, a shadow cast by a tree, but then the figure shifted. A woman, tall and slender, with hair the color of dark chestnut, stood gazing at the water. She wore simple clothing made of soft hides stitched carefully together, but there was a stillness in her presence that made her seem almost otherworldly. Wakasamato paused, unsure whether to approach. She seemed unclaimed, as if she did not belong to anyone, and yet there was a quiet strength about her. The chief's curiosity stirred, mingling with a faint spark of hope he had not felt since Wiyaka had passed. For several minutes he watched her silently, weighing his instincts against his duties. The tribe had rules, traditions, and customs, but his heart nudged him forward. Carefully he stepped onto a fallen log that crossed the shallows of the river. The woman's gaze met his, and for a moment neither spoke. There was no fear in her eyes, only a quiet acknowledgement, as if she had been waiting for someone to notice her. "Good morning," Wakasamato said finally, his voice soft and respectful. "You are far from any village." "Are you lost?" The woman tilted her head slightly, considering him. "I do not have a place to go," she said, her voice calm, almost melodic. She did not explain where she had come from or why she was alone. Wakasamato understood immediately. She was unclaimed, without kin, without a home to return to. The chief hesitated. Tribal custom dictated that strangers could not be left to wander alone, especially women. Yet he also knew that any action he took must be careful and considerate. He could offer her shelter, warmth, and safety, but she must have the choice to accept. "You may come with me," Wakasamato said after a moment. "The sun rises high soon. It will be safer for you in the village than by the river." The woman nodded slightly and stepped forward. Each footfall was deliberate, her movements calm and measured. As she crossed the shallow waters, Waikasamato noticed a faint limp in her step, as if she had walked a long distance. He felt a pang of concern, but did not speak. Words could wait. They reached the edge of the village together. Children paused their games to stare at the strangers. The elders watched from their shaded porches, their eyes curious, but not unkind. Wakasamato led her to a small lodge near the center of the village, one that had been empty since his wife's passing. It had been preserved carefully, a quiet space that seemed to hold memories of laughter, stories, and love. Inside, the lodge smelled of fresh sage and dried herbs. A fire pit in the center held a faint glow from the embers of the night before. Wakasamato gestured toward a mat laid neatly on the floor. "Rest here for now," he said. "Eat, and when you are ready, we can speak." The woman, whose name he would soon learn was Kongi, nodded again. She did not speak much, but her eyes conveyed a quiet strength. She sat on the mat and folded her hands in her lap. Wikasamato could see that she had traveled far, her clothes worn and her feet dusty. Yet, despite her hardships, there was a dignity about her, a calm that seemed unshaken by the world around her. For a while they sat in silence. The only sounds were the crackle of the fire and the distant calls of birds waking to the morning. Wakasamato's grief, which had felt so consuming, began to mingle with curiosity and something unfamiliar, a gentle hope. Perhaps this encounter was not mere chance. Perhaps the Great Spirit had guided Kenji to him, offering a chance to begin again, even after loss. After some time, Wikasamato spoke again. "You are far from home, Kangi. Tell me, where do you come from?" She shook her head gently. "I do not have a home to return to. I have walked many days and nights, seeking a place where I might belong." Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Wakasamato felt a pang of empathy. He knew the pain of losing one's place, the ache of loneliness that could follow even the strongest among them. "You are welcome here," he said. "The village will provide for you. You will not walk alone again, not if you choose to stay." Kengi's eyes met his, and for the first time a faint smile curved her lips. It was a small gesture, but it warmed the chief more than the fire could. "I thank you," she said softly. Outside, the village continued its morning routines. Hunters returned with small game, children laughed and chased each other, and elders offered guidance to those who came seeking advice. Yet within the walls of the lodge, a quiet moment of connection had formed, a bridge between two souls marked by loss and longing. Wikasamato walked to the window, looking out at the river once more. The water reflected the golden sunlight, shimmering like liquid gold. He thought of Wiyaka, and though the grief was still present, it was tempered by a new feeling. Perhaps the heart could heal, slowly, gently, and perhaps life could offer unexpected gifts even in the wake of sorrow. Turning back to Kangi, he noticed her studying the small details of the lodge, the carved patterns on the walls, the simple bowls made of clay, the woven mats. She seemed curious but careful, as if honoring the space that had been left for someone else before her. Wakasamato felt a surge of protectiveness, not out of fear, but out of respect. This woman had wandered far, and now she was in his care. The morning stretched on, and the village began preparing for the day. Wakasamato offered Kangi food: roasted corn, fresh berries, and dried meat. She accepted quietly, eating slowly, savoring each bite. He watched her with a careful attention, noting the way her eyes softened as she ate, the small sigh of relief that escaped her lips. By mid-morning, the sun climbed higher and the village buzzed with life. Wakasamato felt a subtle shift in his heart, a gentle stirring that had not been there since Wiyaka's passing. It was not love, not yet, but it was a recognition of possibility. Perhaps in guiding Kangi safely into the tribe, he could find a new path forward, one marked by connection rather than sorrow. Kangi, for her part, remained quiet but attentive. She observed the people around her, the laughter of children, the careful steps of hunters returning from the plains, the elders' soft voices offering guidance. She seemed to absorb it all, not as an outsider, but as someone learning how to belong. Wakasamato sensed this, and it filled him with a quiet hope that her presence was not fleeting. As the sun reached its zenith, he spoke again. "Rest now," he said gently. "The day is long and you have walked far. There is much to see, much to learn, but first you must regain your strength." Kangi inclined her head, and for a while silence returned to the lodge. The fire crackled softly, and Wikasamato allowed himself a moment of peace. Perhaps the river had brought her here for a reason. Perhaps grief, though heavy, could be softened by the unexpected arrival of someone whose heart was quiet yet strong. And as the wind whispered through the grasses outside, Carrying with it the promise of a new day, Wakasamato felt the faintest flicker of hope. A life that had been shadowed by loss might yet hold light again, if only he and Kangi were willing to step forward together. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting long golden rays across the village. Wakasamato moved through the open space, keeping one careful eye on Kangi as she explored the lodge. He felt a quiet curiosity stir within him. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. Her silence was not timid, but strong, filled with purpose, as if every small gesture carried meaning. Kangi touched the carved patterns on the walls, ran her fingers over the woven mats, and gazed at the clay bowls with quiet fascination. She did not speak, but Wakasamato understood that she was learning, observing, finding a place for herself in this new world. "You have traveled far," he said gently. "The river does not give up its travelers easily. How did you find your way here?" Kangi looked up, meeting his eyes. "I do not know," she replied softly. "I have walked where the wind has carried me. I have followed the paths that seemed safest. And now I am here." Her words were simple, but they carried a depth that made Wikasamato pause. There was wisdom in her calm, a quiet courage that did not rely on words or action. She was unclaimed, without kin or home, yet she stood with a presence that demanded respect. He nodded, sensing the weight of responsibility he now carried. "You are welcome in the village. You will have shelter, food, and protection. You may choose to stay or leave, but while you are here, you will not be alone." Kangi inclined her head in acknowledgement. "Thank you," she said softly. I... I would like to stay." The chief's heart lifted slightly at her words. It was not a grand declaration, not a promise of loyalty, but it was a beginning. In that quiet, understated way, trust had begun to form between them. Wakasamato decided to introduce her to the tribe, not with fanfare or ceremony, but with the gentle respect that the customs demanded. He led Kangi through the village, his tall figure casting a long shadow beside hers. Children paused their games to watch them pass, and elders nodded in quiet acknowledgement. "This is Kangi," Wakasamato said, his voice carrying easily over the soft murmur of the village. "She comes to us without kin, but she seeks a place to belong. Let her walk among us and find her way." The villagers looked at her with curiosity, some with caution. It was unusual for someone unclaimed to arrive in their midst. Yet Kangi's presence was calm, her gaze steady. There was nothing threatening in her demeanor, nothing that demanded attention beyond her quiet dignity. An elder woman stepped forward, placing a hand on her chest in a gesture of welcome. "You are safe here, Kangi," she said softly. As the sun began its slow descent, casting the village in warm amber light, Wakasamato decided to show Kangi the sacred river that ran through the land. It was a place of reflection, of quiet power, where the tribe came to think, to pray, and to honor the past. They walked side by side, their footsteps soft on the grass. Kangi glanced at him, her eyes curious, but she said nothing. She seemed content to follow, learning by observation, absorbing the world around her with gentle care. When they reached the riverbank, Wakasamato gestured to the water. "This river has carried many before us," he said softly. "It has brought food, travelers, and stories. It reminds us that life moves forward, even when we feel still. Perhaps it has brought you here for a reason." Kangi knelt by the water, letting her fingers trace the surface. "It is beautiful," she said quietly. "I have seen many rivers, but this one feels alive. As if it remembers everything that has passed and everything yet to come." The chief watched her, a quiet warmth spreading through him. She was unclaimed, yes, but she was not without strength. Her heart had carried her across vast plains and through loneliness, yet she had arrived here, poised and observant. He felt a deep respect for her resilience. "You are welcome to stay near the river as long as you like," Wakasa Mato said. "It is a place of peace, and it can remind us of our connection to the world." Kangi nodded, smiling faintly. "Thank you. I would like that." As they returned to the village, the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples. Shadows stretched across the lodges, and a cool breeze stirred the grass. Waikasa Mato felt the quiet pull of the approaching evening. By custom, a newcomer could not remain unclaimed as night fell. There was a rhythm to life in the village, a balance between the day's activity and the night's reflection. He approached Kangi gently. "The sun will set soon. It is time to choose where you will rest, where you will belong. You do not need to answer immediately, but the decision is yours." Kangi looked up at him, her expression calm. "Trust you," she said softly. "I will stay here if you will have me." A quiet relief washed over Wakasamato. It was not just the acceptance of shelter or safety, it was a recognition of trust, a bond beginning to form between them. He nodded, offering a small, respectful bow of acknowledgement. The villagers watched from their homes, sensing the quiet ceremony unfolding in their midst. It was not loud or grand, but it was meaningful. The chief had taken a step forward, offering guidance and protection, and the woman had accepted, not out of obligation, but from understanding and choice. Night approached, bringing a soft hush to the village. Fires glowed in the lodges, and the first stars appeared in the sky, shimmering like distant lanterns. Wakasamato and Kangi returned to the lodge, where she settled on the mat near the fire. He watched her for a moment, noting the calm confidence in her posture, the way she seemed to belong already, if only in the smallest of ways. "You have found a place here," he said softly, "not because of duty or obligation, but because you have chosen it. That is what makes this home different from the roads you have traveled." Kangi looked at him, a faint smile gracing her lips. "I understand," she said simply. "I will learn, and I will belong. I will try." Wakasamato felt the quiet pull of hope stir in his chest. For the first time in many moons, the heaviness of grief seemed lighter. Perhaps the arrival of Kangi, unclaimed and unseen, was not mere chance. Perhaps it was the beginning of a new chapter, one marked not by loss, but by connection, trust, and shared understanding. As the fire crackled softly in the lodge, they sat together in comfortable silence, two souls who had met at the edge of the river and found the beginnings of a bond. Outside, the village rested, unaware of the quiet miracle unfolding within the walls of the lodge, and as night settled over the plains, Wakasa Mato felt a gentle reassurance that, even in the wake of sorrow, life could offer moments of grace. Kangi had chosen to stay, and in doing so had brought the faintest glimmer of light back into his heart. The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the sky with deep shades of orange, pink, and violet. Shadows stretched long across the village, and the air carried a gentle chill as the evening approached. Wakasamato walked beside Kanji, noticing the way the soft light highlighted the thoughtful expression on her face. She had spent the day observing the tribe, learning its rhythms, and finding small ways to belong. They approached the river, where the water glimmered like molten gold in the sunset. Waikasa Mato stopped and gestured for Kangi to sit on a smooth stone near the riverbank. The air was calm, broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the stones and the occasional cry of a distant bird returning to its nest. "Today has been a long day," he said softly. "You have walked with me through the village, observed the people, and taken in the river. I hope it has given you some peace." Kangi nodded, folding her hands in her lap. "It has," she said quietly. "I have seen many things today. The strength of the hunters, the care of the elders, the laughter of the children. It feels like a place where I might belong." Wikasamoto smiled faintly. The words warmed him more than the sun ever could. Belonging is not always simple, he said. It takes time, trust, and understanding. But today, you have shown a courage that is rare. You have walked among us, unclaimed and unseen, and yet you have begun to make this place your own. Kangi looked at him, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. I do not know how to thank you, she said softly. You have offered me shelter, food, and a place in the tribe without question. I have never known such kindness. Wikasamoto felt a quiet ache in his chest. He had been living with loss for many months, carrying the weight of grief that no one could see. Yet in Kangi's presence he felt a lightness he had not known since Wiyaka's passing. Her calm, her quiet strength, and her trust had begun to ease the heaviness in his heart. You need not thank me, he said gently. It is enough that you are here, that you are learning and choosing to stay. That is all that matters. They sat in silence for a few moments, listening to the river and watching the sun dip lower. The village behind them grew quieter as families prepared for evening fires, glowing softly in the lodges, smoke rising like thin fingers into the twilight sky. Wakasamoto knew that soon the day would end, and with it the time for Kangi to decide her place in the tribe would come. He turned to her, his eyes steady. Kangi, he said, the sun will set soon. In our way, it is customary that one who comes unclaimed must choose their place before nightfall. You have lived without a home for so long. Tonight, you may choose to rest in this lodge, among the people, and begin a new life. That choice is yours alone. Kangi's gaze dropped to the river, where the water shimmered with the last rays of the sun. Her hands tightened slightly in her lap, and Wakasamoto could sense the quiet storm of thought within her. She had wandered for so long, without family or protection, without a sense of belonging. Now, she was faced with a decision that would change the course of her life. I trust you, she said finally, her voice steady despite the tremor of emotion beneath it. I will stay. I will be part of the village, if you will have me. Waikasamoto felt a wave of relief and warmth wash over him. Her words were simple, but they carried a profound weight. She had chosen not out of fear or obligation, but from trust and understanding. He nodded respectfully, a small smile crossing his face. You are welcome, he said softly. Not because you must be, but because you have chosen to be here. That is what makes this place different from the roads you have traveled. This is not just shelter, it is a home, if you wish it to be. Kangi looked up at him, and for the first time her eyes seemed to shine with something beyond curiosity or caution. I want it to be, she said softly. Waikasamoto gestured for her to stand, and they walked together back toward the village. The twilight had deepened into evening, and the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Fires glowed warmly in the lodges, and the gentle hum of evening routines filled the air. The villagers watched them pass, sensing the quiet significance of the moment. Elders nodded in approval, and children glanced up from their games with curiosity. The village had long observed the ways of custom, and the chief's careful guidance in welcoming Kangi reflected wisdom and respect. She was unclaimed, yes, but she was also strong, observant, and willing to walk alongside them. In that, there was a lesson for all. Kindness, patience, and trust could create bonds stronger than any obligation. When they reached the lodge, Wakasamoto gestured toward the mat near the fire. Rest here tonight, he said gently. The lodge is yours as much as it is mine. Tomorrow, you will continue to learn the ways of the tribe, if you wish. But tonight is for rest and reflection. Kangi knelt by the fire, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Wakasa Mato watched her for a long moment, noticing the way she seemed at ease, the way her shoulders relaxed after the long day of travel, observation, and decision-making. She had come to the tribe, unclaimed and unseen, yet she had arrived with dignity and calm, and she would remain with them, shaping her own place in their midst. As night settled over the plains, Wakasa Mato felt a quiet stirring in his heart. The grief that had weighed him down for so long was still there, but it no longer consumed him entirely. There was hope now, fragile and delicate, but real. Kengi's presence reminded him that even after loss, life could offer connection, understanding, and the possibility of companionship. The lodge was quiet, save for the soft crackle of the fire and the distant calls of night birds. Wakasa Mato moved to the window and looked out at the stars, thinking of Wayaka. He remembered her laughter, her gentle guidance, and the warmth she had brought to his life. Though she was gone, the lessons she had imparted, love, respect, patience, remained. And now, with Kengi, he could begin to honor those lessons in a new way, building a bond that would grow with trust and care. Kengi spoke softly, breaking the silence. "The village feels alive," she said. "Even in the quiet moments, I feel connected. I have walked alone for so long, and now I feel that I belong." Wakasa Mato nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "Belonging is a gift we give to ourselves and to others," he said. "It grows slowly, nurtured by trust and understanding. You have already taken the first steps. The rest will come with time." They sat together, side by side, as the stars grew brighter in the night sky. The fire cast gentle shadows across the lodge, and the air carried a faint scent of sage and earth. In that quiet, sacred space, Wakasa Mato felt the beginnings of something new, a bond not born of obligation, but of choice, respect, and shared understanding. The chief spoke again, his voice gentle and calm. "Tomorrow you will meet more of the tribe, learn the ways of our people, and continue to find your place. But tonight, you are safe. You are seen, and that is enough." Kanji nodded, her eyes softening with gratitude. "I will try," she said simply. And with that, the two sat together in the quiet of the lodge, watching the stars, listening to the night, and feeling the gentle pull of connection. Outside, the village rested, the fires glowing warmly in the lodges, and the plains stretching endlessly under the night sky. Wakasa Mato knew that tomorrow would bring challenges, learning, and growth, but tonight there was peace. The unclaimed and unseen woman had chosen to stay, and in doing so, had begun a new chapter for both herself and the chief. In the quiet of the evening, with the river flowing nearby and the stars overhead, the first threads of trust and understanding were woven, delicate but unbreakable. The night deepened, the fire in the lodge glowing softly, and the chief and Kangi sat in quiet reflection, two souls who had found each other at the edge of the river and chosen to walk forward together. Grief still lingered, but hope had returned. And as the stars shone brightly above, Wakasa Mato felt a promise of connection, companionship, and the possibility of a future shared with someone who had once been unclaimed and unseen, but who was now part of his world. The first light of dawn crept over the plains, brushing the village with soft pinks and golds. Wakasa Mato stirred from his mat near the fire and glanced at Kangi, who was already awake. She sat quietly, gazing out the window at the river where the morning mist floated like silver clouds above the water. The night had been calm, the fire's embers fading into ash, and the world felt gentle, as if holding its breath for the promise of the day. Kangi turned to him and smiled, faint but sincere. "It is peaceful," she said softly. "I slept well, and the lodge feels like a home." Wikasamato's chest tightened slightly with quiet joy. She had accepted her place, and the bond forming between them had not been rushed or forced. It had been nurtured slowly, carefully, with respect and trust. Peace is a gift we must take, he said gently, and a home is not just the walls around us. It is the people we choose to walk with, the connections we nurture, and the care we offer each other. Kangi nodded thoughtfully. Then this will be my home. I will try to be worthy of it. Wakasamato smiled. You already are, he said simply. The village had begun to stir as the morning light grew stronger. Children ran through the paths between lodges, laughing and calling out to one another. Smoke rose from hearths as the smell of cooking drifted through the air. Hunters returned with small game from the early morning hunt, and elders began their daily routines of teaching, advising, and observing. Life moved steadily, in rhythm with the sun and the seasons, and the presence of Kangi added a quiet new rhythm of her own. Wakasamato and Kangi walked together toward the river, the dew wetting their moccasins and the soft grass brushing against their legs. He wanted her to see the land fully, to understand the beauty and the strength of the plains that had shaped the tribe for generations. As they reached the riverbank, the water shimmered in the early light, reflecting the soft pink sky above. This river has seen countless travelers, he said quietly. It has carried people, stories, and dreams. It teaches patience, endurance, and reflection. Perhaps it has brought you here to remind us both that life moves forward even after loss. Kangi knelt by the water and let her fingers trace its surface. It is beautiful, she whispered. I feel calm here, as if the river is speaking to me. Wakasamato watched her, noticing the gentle ease in her movements, the way her eyes softened as she connected with the land around her. She was no longer the unclaimed and unseen woman he had found by the river the day before. She had become part of the world she had entered with trust and courage. Tomorrow you will meet more of the tribe, learn their ways, and continue to build your place among us, Wakasamato said. But today is for reflection and for beginning anew. You have chosen to stay. That choice is a gift, both to yourself and to the village. Kangi looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the morning sun. I am grateful, she said simply. Not just for the shelter, but for the trust you have given me. I have wandered alone for so long. Now I feel seen. Wikasamoto's heart stirred. Seeing someone truly recognized, acknowledged, and respected was a rare gift. To witness that light in her eyes was more than he could have expected. Then let this day be the first of many, he said softly. They walked back to the village together, and as they approached the central gathering space, the villagers paused to watch. Kangi's presence was no longer strange or unsettling. Her calm and observant demeanor had woven a quiet acceptance among them. Children ran to greet her, curious but not afraid. Elders nodded in approval, sensing her genuine desire to belong. An elder woman approached Kangi and offered her a small braid of sweetgrass, a symbol of blessing and welcome. May this day mark the beginning of your new life, the elder said. You have chosen to stay, and in doing so, you have brought harmony to yourself and to those around you. Kangi accepted the gift with reverence, holding it gently in her hands. Thank you, she whispered. The chief stood beside her, proud and quietly moved. The choice had been hers alone, but it had been made with courage, and it was beautiful to witness. Wakasamato knew that the journey ahead would involve learning, growing, and nurturing relationships, but this first step had been taken with grace. As the morning passed, Kangi began to engage more with the village. She helped elders with small tasks, observed hunters as they prepared for the day, and shared smiles with children who ran around her. Every step she took was careful, respectful, and deliberate, and the villagers responded in kind. She was no longer unclaimed or unseen. She was part of the tribe, and the quiet warmth she brought was felt by all. By midday, Wakasa Mato led her to the lodge where he had spent so many lonely hours since his wife's passing. It had been preserved carefully, holding memories of love, laughter, and guidance. Now it would become a space for new memories, shaped by choice and companionship. You may rest here and take time to make it your own, he said. It is a place for reflection, for learning, and for beginning again. Kangi nodded, feeling the weight of both gratitude and responsibility. She moved slowly, noticing the small details, the carved patterns, the woven mats, and the simple hearth. It was a place of history, of life lived fully, and now it would become part of her journey as well. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, Wakasa Mato and Kanji returned to the river. The water glimmered with the fading light, and the plains stretched endlessly around them. Life is not always easy, he said softly. There will be challenges, moments of doubt, and times when the heart feels heavy. But there is also beauty, connection, and the chance to walk together, guided by trust and respect. Kangi listened quietly, her gaze on the shimmering water. I understand, she said. I have wandered far, but now I see that a home is not just walls and land. It is the people, the trust, and the care we offer each other. I am ready to be part of that. Wakasa Mato felt a quiet joy in his chest. Her words were simple, yet they carried a depth that touched him deeply. He reached out and offered his hand, which she took gently, as if affirming a shared understanding. They walked back toward the village together, the soft glow of the evening sun casting long shadows across the plains. The villagers watched quietly, sensing the significance of the moment. The chief had offered trust and protection, and the woman had accepted with courage and grace. It was a quiet celebration of connection, choice, and the beginning of a new chapter. As the last light of the sun faded, the first stars appeared in the sky. Wakasamato and Kangi stood together by the river, their hands brushing, their hearts quietly intertwined. There was no rush, no grand declaration, only the recognition that they had found something rare, companionship born of respect, trust, and understanding. That night, the lodge glowed with the warmth of firelight, soft and inviting. Kangi settled near the hearth, and Wakasamato joined her, both feeling the quiet satisfaction of a day well lived. Outside, the village rested under a blanket of stars, the plains stretching endlessly in every direction. Wakasamato spoke softly, almost to himself, almost to the night. Grief does not vanish, but it can coexist with hope. Loss does not prevent connection, and sorrow does not block joy. Tonight, we begin anew. Kangi looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight and the stars. I will walk this path with you, she said simply. And together, we will find balance, strength, and peace. The chief nodded, feeling the quiet weight of grief lighten just a little. Together, they would honor the past while embracing the future. Together, they would build a life of connection, trust, and shared purpose. And as the night deepened, Wakasa, Mato, and Kangi sat in quiet companionship, two souls who had met at the edge of the river and chosen to walk forward together. The stars above shone brightly, the river flowed gently, and the plains stretched endlessly, holding the promise of a new dawn, new beginnings, and the quiet joy of belonging. The village will guide you, as it has guided others before you. You are part of our world now, if you choose to be. Kangi nodded again, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. She did not speak, but Wakasa Mato could see the flicker of relief in her eyes. She had been wandering for so long, moving through the world without a place to rest. Now she had found shelter, warmth, and the possibility of belonging. Throughout the day, Wakasa Mato remained near her, observing her quietly. She moved through the village with cautious grace, watching the children play, noticing the way the hunters carried themselves, listening to the elders' stories. She was learning the rhythms of the tribe, the ways of their daily life, and the chief admired her patience and attentiveness. At midday, they returned to the lodge to eat. Wakasamato prepared a simple meal of roasted corn, dried berries, and small pieces of meat from the hunter's morning catch. He offered the food to Kangi, and she accepted, eating slowly, savoring each bite. He noticed the way her eyes softened as she ate, the small sigh of relief that escaped her lips. "Do you miss your home?" he asked gently, curious not out of prying, but from a desire to understand her. Kangi paused, her hands folded in her lap. "I do not remember a home," she said finally. "I have walked so far, and I have learned that a home is not always a place. Sometimes it is the people around you, the warmth you feel when you are not alone." Wikasamato felt a quiet stir in his chest at her words. They were simple, yet profound. She had wandered, unclaimed and unseen, yet she carried wisdom beyond her years. Perhaps the Great Spirit had guided her here to remind him that life, even after loss, could still offer connection and understanding.